Well, hello, how's it going? I'm not going to play any tunes today. Usually I cover some song. Today I'm going to talk about my favourite albums. I thought it'd be quite interesting for you to find out a bit more about my musical tastes, but also I want to find out some good recommendations, stuff that I might enjoy. I've become a bit bored with my musical library. I want some good recommendations and to try out some new stuff. And really, the only way to get good recommendations is to kind of show these are the kind of things that I like. What else do you think I might like? So anyway, it's kind of fun to put these lists together, like top 20, top 30 lists. And these are my favourite albums, kind of in a top 30 order. Coming up with your top 30, it's difficult to do, certainly. And there's some things that I'm going to come back in years to come and think, oh God, I wish I'd included that. But this is my top 30 as it stands today. Is my taste in music really good? Is it better than yours? Am I trying to show off? No, that's not what I'm trying to do. It's really subjective. I mean, there's stuff that you probably really hate that I really enjoy that will pop up on this video. And that's fine, because so much of music is based on your experiences, and you have all these kind of memories that are attached to music. There's 3 rules when I was making this video. So you can only have one artist or band being represented in the album. I mean, certainly there'll be musicians that perhaps have a bit of crossover and may have appeared or performed on albums, but I'm trying to keep it as one artist per album and no like multiple albums. Second rule is just to be really honest about what I like. I'm not trying to show off, I'm not trying to be cool. This is just genuinely what I enjoy, and whether you like it or not, I don't really care. I'm just trying to explain it and as I say, try and get some recommendations. And the third thing is do minimal research. I'm not going to be one of these people that makes these videos that are really in depth about who was the mixing engineer and who mastered it and which studio. I kind of think that's information that only certain people are going to be interested in. I'll give you a brief overview, but minimal research, just what year was the album made and kind of who was the artist really, and what I think about it. So keep it pretty high level, but let's get cracking. Yeah, Monk's Dream, I love this. Thelonious Monk, jazz pianist. He plays very kind of angular, jolty, kind of dissonant music. But it's really lively, it's upbeat. He's very natural in his performance and exceptionally talented technical player, but he's got a very unique style as well, I think. I would have loved to have watched Thelonious Monk perform in real life. But anyway, he's a really interesting character, but just... he wrote quite a lot of standards, or tunes that became standards, jazz standards in time. So, important member of, the jazz world. Out of the Blue by ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. This is an amazing album, just pure gold pop. I hadn't heard much of their stuff, but it seems to be that this is one of their best, their finest albums. And just incredible songwriting from Jeff Lynne. And I've only heard this for the first time only a couple of years ago. So I think had I have had access to this album when I was younger, I probably would love it, and it would be higher up on this list. Well-written songs, as I say, it's kind of in the style. It's kind of like that kind of mid-60s Beatles period, before they got too wacky, but it takes that classic songwriting and puts some kind of, orchestration, some string arrangements, synths, vocal effects. But yeah, really good album, highly recommend it. I don't know that much about the Lemonheads, but I really like this album. I think a friend of mine kind of gave me a copy many years ago, and I just really enjoyed it. The songs sound very nostalgic. It sounds like I've heard them when I was a kid, but actually this is a relatively recent album, I suppose. But I guess the Lemonheads were featured during my childhood. They kind of popped up. So Evan Dando is the kind of main songwriter, singer, and his songs will kind of pop up when I was a kid. This album came out in 2006, but I'd say to me it sounds much older. It sounds very kind of 90s, and some may see that as a criticism, but I just think it's Lemonheads doing what they do very well. And Evan Dando's songwriting. So there's some great tracks on this album, like Poughkeepsie, Pittsburgh. I mean, the whole album is consistently good, which is why it's on this list. But yeah, check out if you haven't heard it. If you're into that kind of, I don't know, lo-fi, indie rock stuff, Stephen Malkmus, Pavement, that kind of thing, you might really enjoy it. The Blue Tones, I mean, this is a bit of a funny one to have on the list. It's kind of Britpop, later Britpop, but you know, I first heard it obviously back in the 90s. My brother was really into the Blue Tones, and I kind of vicariously listened to the music through him. But yeah, as I got older, I kind of bought some of the stuff and or downloaded it and really enjoyed it. And the more I listen to this album, the more I just think this is really high quality songwriting. I mean, you don't get fantastic arrangements and you don't get virtuosic instrument playing and performances, but what you do get is just a solid band that knows how to write really good songs. You know, kind of 3-4 minute pop songs, but there's a lot of clever thought that goes into these songs. This is why I really enjoy it, and there's enough in it to make me keep on coming back, and you don't get bored of this album. Expecting to Fly was their big breakthrough album, and 1996, there's so much good music that came out around 95, 96. I suppose if you were alive in the 90s, it was just so much good stuff. You know, some rubbish stuff as well, but there was some very, very good music that came out, and just great songwriting. I mean, Blue Tonic is such an amazing single. You know, Cut Some Rug. There's some big singles as well as just really nice songs, and I keep on coming back to it. Good band, good album, love it.
If these walls could talk, they probably still ignore me.
Vaudeville Villain, Victor Vaughan. So this is Doom, MF Doom, Daniel Dumoulin. One of his many, I guess, aliases that he used. And why am I choosing this album? I guess it's Doom trying to do a kind of almost like kind of gangster rap or have this kind of gangster persona. But I just like this one the best. I've heard a lot of his stuff, heard a lot of his albums. I'm not the biggest hip hop fan, but I really appreciate MF Doom. I think he's far and above any other rapper I've heard. And I've heard a lot of rap and a lot of hip hop, but Doom is the best. Recently passed away, which is sad. And so this album, Victor Vaughan, it's really funny. It's got this this character that he's created, getting up to no good, and I just think it's the best collection of songs. I mean, there's other albums that I really like. I really like Food. That's a really good album, and the stuff that he did with Danger Mouse was really good. You know, Mad Villain is highly rated critically, but doesn't really capture me the same way as some of his other stuff. But Doom's a really, really great artist. You know, a huge vocabulary, really interesting. He's got a sense of humour. It's quite self-deprecating. As I say, I'm not the biggest hip hop fan. I'm sure there's loads of other hip hop and rap that I need to be exposed to that's really interesting. But yeah, I love Doom, and I like this album. Ray Dawn is a killer track, and the opening kind of Lick Upon, Vaudeville Villain. Got some great tracks on this album, and it's just good fun. Overall, very, very solid album, and I really, really like Doom as an artist, so yeah.
A foggy day.
This is a great jazz album. So you've got Ella and Louis, so Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong kind of coming together to play some of their favourite jazz standards in the way that they want to play it. And these are some very popular jazz standards. So I think this album is like a good introduction to jazz music if perhaps you're quite unfamiliar with it. It's just good songs, good songwriting, performed by some of the most legendary jazz musicians. So obviously Ella Fitzgerald, I think she's my favourite singer ever. I don't think anyone's ever come really close to her as a vocalist. I think her tone, her diction, the quality of her voice is absolutely incredible. I read that she has like perfect pitch, absolute pitch. So that kind of explained to me how she can get to each note just so perfectly, and there's no wavering. But just the quality of her voice is so pure, and it's really beautiful. So she's by far and away my favourite singer ever. And then you've got Louis Armstrong, who also sings in his very signature style, as well as playing trumpet. You got Herb Ellis on guitar, Ray Brown on the bass. You got Buddy Rich on the drums. I used to play the drums when I was a kid, and my drum teacher would rave about Buddy Rich. I was relatively unfamiliar with him, but obviously he's a legendary jazz drummer and band leader. And then you've got Oscar Peterson on piano. And as far as jazz pianists go, I think Oscar is probably my favourite. His improvisational skills, I think, surpass anyone I've ever heard. But anyway, coming back to this album, so you've got these unbelievable jazz musicians, all legends. So it's just really solid in its performance, and I say it's a great introduction to jazz. It's Ella showcasing what she does best. I mean, you can listen to any Ella Fitzgerald recordings and you'll be impressed and captivated and blown away. I know I am. So yeah, this has to be on there on this list because Ella's the best singer ever. Le Baptême. This is an album that you probably haven't heard of. You might. Mathieu Chédid, he goes by the name kind of M. He's a French singer, kind of pop star, rock star. But yeah, I came across this album purely by luck, really. So my band that I was in at the time, we were kind of doing a little tour in France, and we took a day off to go to Paris. And whilst we were in Paris, we did some of the touristy stuff, as you do. And then we went into the, I think it was like a Virgin music shop on the Champs-Élysées. And I really wanted to get some kind of local French music. So I just went into kind of the French rock section and just picked an album out at random. And it was partly due to the really cool album artwork. I think the cover artwork, and I thought, that looks cool. But I'd never heard of Mathieu Chédid, and I'd never heard of this album. But I was so lucky to pick out that particular album because it's great. It's just full of such interesting, fun, quirky pop songs, and it's got this very French flavour to it with the chords and the voicings and the kind of jazz, like kind of French jazz infusion. But at the same time, it's very kind of Americanized and it's poppy. So it's like a fun, funky pop rock album, which is kind of my favourite music, really. I like quirky, fun stuff that's a little bit unpredictable, but also, as I said, it's got that kind of acoustic French jazz cafe kind of flavour to it, which is really cool. And it's got some, pretty much every song or every track is amazing. I really enjoy it. He's got a very high voice, and I don't speak French well enough to know really what he's talking about, but there's lots of word play going on, and yeah, it's just really cool. Check it out. I'm alone, but I could talk for a long time about Jacob Collier. I'm not going to. Suffice it to say that I think he's the best thing that's happened to music in a very, very long time. Certainly since Frank Zappa. I think an artist like Jacob Collier comes along once every 100 years or so. And I think like a lot of people who like Jacob Collier, they first saw him on YouTube doing these amazing productions, like kind of vocal harmonies, of kind of cover songs, and then over time he's written more of his own stuff and he's collaborated with lots of other musicians. But In My Room was his kind of first solo album, completely written by himself, self-produced, performed everything himself, all the instruments, mastered and mixed everything himself. It's an incredible achievement anyway. But he then went on to his Jesse project, which is 4 albums, and we're up to Jesse Volume 3. We're eagerly awaiting Jesse Volume 4. And there's so much that can be said about Jacob and his knowledge of music theory and his ability to kind of educate and explain what he's doing and how he's created these things is really unparalleled. He's done loads of great videos and live streams where you see him producing these tracks on Logic at his kind of home studio, and it's fascinating. I could watch it for hours and hours, and I often do on YouTube, because just to see this guy at work, see the way his brain functions. He's got like perfect pitch, absolute pitch, which means that he can pick out notes and sing notes, and deconstruct a chord or a very complex harmony very easily. So that's an amazing talent and gift that he has that I don't have. I wish I did have absolute pitch, but I don't. I can't do those kind of things. So that's impressive. But there's just so much about Jacob that's impressive. His piano playing it seems to be he's a phenomenal jazz pianist. His drumming, I mean, I played the drums. I played the drums when I was a kid. His understanding of rhythm and complex polyrhythms is mind blowing. He's an incredible bass player. He's doing just some incredible things, incredible feel on the bass guitar. He's a very, very good guitarist. He's got his own style. He uses lots of alternate tunings. Any instrument that he picks up, he masters, he understands it, and he can create just incredible music. Life is often a bit kind of dull and boring and repetitive, miserable. It can get frustrating sometimes, just everyday life. And then someone like Jacob Collier comes along, and he's just so joyful, and he shows you what he's doing, and he's so excited about life, and to just have the opportunity to do these things, that it's really infectious. So if you haven't heard Jacob Collier, then what are you waiting for? Go on the journey, because this guy is very, very special.
I'm in a mood.
This is a really cool album. If you haven't heard it, Sublime. So I had a friend when I was, I don't know, 14, 15, and he was really into Sublime, and he was a bit unusual, this guy, and he'd always be like singing the lyrics to some of the songs off this album in school, kind of out of context. So I got familiar with the some of the lyrics and the songs just through him kind of singing. But yeah, I remember like when he lent me a copy, and so I finally listened to Sublime, and I finally heard what this sort of music was, and I guess I didn't really know what to expect, and perhaps it was kind of different to anything I'd heard before, because it's got ska influences, reggae influences. It's groovy, it's funky, it's kind of rock, and it's got some metal influences as well. Kind of punky in its aesthetic. It's very of its place, so kind of like Long Beach, where they come from. So you're getting that, kind of Hispanic influence. And they were probably just reflecting, the music that they heard. And it's got different grooves that I hadn't heard before. In both the bass line, there's kind of some kind of dub bass lines going on, and the rhythm of the drumming is quite unusual. Or very different to just standard rock music. So interesting album, but really great songs. So Bradley Knowles, the lead singer, he kind of died not long after this album was released, and he certainly died before his time. Very talented songwriter. He was a guitarist, main singer, and he talks about his life and the struggles and what's going on in LA at the time, I suppose. But yeah, it's a fantastic album. If you haven't heard it, check it out. Crash Test Dummies. I mean, we all know that song, don't we? That. I might approximate that on my channel one day, because it's a cool little song. I like the chords, but they kind of been known as a one-hit wonder, a Canadian. What would you call them? Pop folk rock band, perhaps. Very Canadian. I don't quite know what I mean by that, but they just come across as very, very Canadian. Yeah, this is actually an album that my dad bought back in the 90s, and I don't know why he bought it, but obviously he liked the single, and it's one of these ones where you think they're just a one-hit wonder band, but then you hear the other music that they've written, and it turns out to be brilliant stuff. Is it groundbreaking? Probably not, but it's formed kind of a special place in my life, because I don't know, for some reason 10, 15 years ago I started listening to this quite often. It became like the soundtrack to my life at that time, and it does have some really good songs, really interesting chord sequences, interesting arrangements. The guy's got a very unique voice. He's got a very kind of like deep, kind of baritone-y bass kind of voice, and some of the lyrics are very odd and unusual, and again quirky, kind of Canadian. I think Canadians have got a good sense of humour generally, and don't take themselves too seriously. They're quite self-deprecating. So yeah, it's kind of definitely got that vibe to it. But it's just a good album, and why is it on this list? Well, it's not the best collection of songs in the world, but it's solid, and it means something to me in my life, because it as I said, I listened to it for so long, for many years. So yeah. The Mars Volta, this is quite high up in my list, but I was thinking about the heavier stuff I like. I mean, this album isn't really that heavy, but it's got a kind of heavy metal energy to it, but it's very melodic. It's quite complicated music, quite proggy, but it's like modern prog music, math rock, I suppose people might call it. I don't know, I hate that term. But it's just very, very raw, and I love the fact that there's loads of like purposeful dissonance, like things are just slightly out of tune and slightly out of kind of rhythm with each other. But the band just plays with this energy, this live raw energy, and that's what comes across on the record. When you listen to this album, it really does sound like the band are just playing right there, and you can hear they've managed to capture all of the energy of a live performance. So this is a fantastic sounding album. You have to listen to it quite loud on your headphones or on your speakers, but it's just got some really interesting, complicated music, and it's a really enjoyable listen. It's quite dark, but yeah, really good album. Love it. Loveless by My Bloody Valentine. This kind of comes up on a lot of these lists of like the best rock albums ever, and frankly, that's kind of how I discovered it. I was kind of looking for things that would interest me, stuff that I hadn't heard before, and this album kept on popping up, Loveless, and it's got that cool kind of pink psychedelic cover. I thought, I've no idea about My Bloody Valentine, but let's give it a go, and I bought the album with kind of no background reading. I just listened to it and just really enjoyed it. It was quite an unusual style, or a style I wasn't familiar with, this kind of shoegaze scene. So they're an Irish band, and the shoegaze scene, I mean, again, I'm not really equipped to talk about it in any great detail. Part of the rules of these videos is that I don't really research anything in detail. But I think it's kind of shoegaze as in you're looking down at your feet because you're mucking about with your pedals all the time, your guitar pedals. So very effect-laden music, and kind of a bit introspective, perhaps, not overly commercial at all, not poppy. It was a particular scene that, it kind of came and went, I think. I'm sure there are still some shoegaze bands out there, but although it's in that genre which, as I described it, doesn't sound like it's going to be very interesting. From a songwriting perspective, actually, the songs on Loveless are incredibly well crafted and arranged, and there's nice melodies in there. So, yeah, it isn't just all about the effects. There's some great songwriting in there, which is why I enjoy it, and which is why it's on this list so high up. It's got some of the things that I really like. So it's got powerful drums. It's got quite short arrangements, 3-4 minutes. It's got great kind of chord changes, and it's got the kind of very breathy female vocals. I love female vocals generally within rock music. So I'm thinking of stuff like often it's like backing vocals, but I kind of like that when it's like female breathy backing vocals. So I think of like Prefab Sprout, think of Pixies, just trying to think of some other bands. But yeah, in Loveless, you can't really pick up the lyrics, the words to the songs, because the way that the vocals are mixed, it's all like kind of misty and swirly and foggy. And you can't really tell who's singing, whether it's Belinda or Kevin. But that's part of the aesthetic. This is very much, you have to enjoy the aesthetic of shoegaze and of My Bloody Valentine and what they're trying to do. I went to go and see them in London, I think Hammersmith, I can't really remember, but it was the loudest gig I've ever been to. It was insane. And they're relatively, not a huge venue, but it was, they cranked everything up so loud. It was like mind-boggling, and then they were recommending people to like wear earplugs before you went in, and I was like, earplugs to go and watch a gig? That sounds crazy, but I kind of needed them towards the end. But you could feel the sound waves pulsing through your body. It was a real visceral, physical experience, and I felt incredibly unwell for the next 2 or 3 days. It took me a couple of days to feel normal after that gig, because it was like my internal organs were getting a pounding from the sound waves. And I know that sounds like a funny thing to hear, but if you've experienced those, that music at that volume, it's a real physical experience, and I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting to be as loud as it was. But anyway, they were fantastic, and it was just a very memorable gig. So I've got a lot of respect for My Bloody Valentine. Great songwriters, a very energetic performance, and yeah, it's just a cool album. Check it out. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really into the Manics when I was very young, but I think as I got into my kind of early mid-20s, that's when I kind of started to enjoy them a bit more. I kind of preferred their later stuff. Some of their early stuff I wasn't a big fan of. Tried to like it, it's just not for me. It doesn't talk to me. I was the wrong generation, perhaps wrong demographic, I guess. But the later stuff, it was less political, I think, and freer musically, and they can embrace some pop sensibilities, which I genuinely enjoy. I like pop music, unashamedly. So I think bringing pop elements into rock music is I like that. But anyway, I like Everything Must Go. It's a very, very good album. When I was about 17, 18, I listened to this over and over again. I don't know why, I kind of got a bit obsessed about this album. I was learning guitar a bit more seriously at that point in my life, and so I was listening to James Dean Bradfield's guitar lines and trying to learn them. So I got kind of fascinated with the guitar solos and the compositions, and I was studying the album, I suppose you could say. So yeah, Girl Who Wanted to Be God, amazing. Elvis Impersonator, I Know That Alone. I could list every track on the album, and I would stand up and say, yeah, that's an amazing track. So very good indeed. Noah, I love Noah. So this is a project from Lewis Cole and Genevieve Artadi. They've got a very kind of indie feel to them, but they are free in their creativity, and the way that they produce songs and produce this album in particular it's just a really enjoyable listen. It's bright, it's poppy, it's got some really great influences of kind of music, or nods to music that I really enjoy. So it's got some kind of house, electronica, dance music, kind of effects and arrangements, and the way that it builds up. Kind of a bit dubsteppy perhaps, like rave music, like techno and rave music. So yeah, I just love it, and it's all put together and it's just delivered in this very slick, cool package. And Lewis Cole's a fantastic drummer and songwriter and singer and everything else, but particular of note is his drumming skills. And Genevieve has a very high ethereal voice, and she creates these very unique melodies over the arrangement. And so yeah, this is a really great album. If you haven't heard it, just check it out. It's difficult not to enjoy this. I think anyone would enjoy it. So much going on. I think this is Phoenix's best album. I'm a big fan of Phoenix, actually. They're not the most groundbreaking band in terms of their style of music, but I just really like them. I've liked them for many years, and got quite a good number of their albums, and listened through it and seen their kind of evolution. And I think each album they try and do something slightly different. Bankrupt is very synthy, but they're melding the kind of synth with their classic. I don't even know how to describe it. It's that kind of Strokesy rock type vibe, where everything is quite mid-high tempo and very, very kind of rigid. It's in the style of the Strokes. I think there's a big influence there, and I just think they're really, they write some really interesting music, like chord-wise as well. They use seems to be they use lots of inversions in the bass and like pedal tones in the bass while the chords are doing something else. A bit kind of similar to Genesis. So I appreciate that in terms of the songwriting. But yet they just have just a real ear for pop music. It doesn't sound very French at all, really. Certainly Bankrupt, I think is very much an American sounding album. But yeah, she's great. She's got some great tunes. It features quite highly up on my list because I love it, and Well, I love the fact that every track on it is very, very good. It's very high quality. There's no weak points. They've put a lot of thought and effort into this. The songwriting is great. The production is amazing. It just sounds so slick and beautiful. And it's an album that I don't hear many people talking about. Well, I don't hear many people talking about Phoenix generally. No one's ever recommended them to me, but just really like them. When did I first hear them? Probably on Shallow Hal. Shallow Hal's got an amazing soundtrack. The film Shallow Hal, and I think was it Too Much featured on that film during the little disco scene when they're in the little nightclub. That's probably where I first heard Phoenix, and yeah, it's just my kind of music.